When I arrived in the unit, no one explained how meals really worked. The guards told us where to line up, when to take our trays, and when to sit down. That was all. There were no instructions about who you could sit next to, who you should avoid, or what it meant to accept something from another person's tray. I thought food was just food. I learned quickly that in prison, even eating has rules that no one writes down. On my second day, I noticed the man who never ate with anyone. Everyone else sat in loose groups. Some men joked loudly. Some argued over space. Some guarded their trays with elbows. But he always took his food and walked to the same corner near the wall, where there was just enough room to sit alone. He didn't face the tables, he faced the wall. He ate slowly, never looking up, never speaking. No one joined him. No one tried. At first, I thought he was sick or angry or simply antisocial. Then I started noticing how other people reacted to him. They didn't mock him, they didn't threaten him, they avoided him in a way that felt deliberate, like stepping around a puddle you don't want to get your shoes wet in.
Once, a new guy tried to sit near him because there was no space left at the tables. A voice from across the room said, "Not there." The new guy looked confused, but he stood up and moved without arguing. The man by the wall didn't even look up. The room went back to normal, as if nothing had happened. That was the first time I realized food in prison isn't just food. Later that night, when the block was quiet, in the way prison gets quiet, I asked my cellmate why nobody ate with him. My cellmate stared at the ceiling for a moment before answering. "Because eating with someone means something in here," he said. "It's not just sitting down, it's choosing to be seen with them." "Seen how?" I asked. "Seen as connected," he replied, "and connection is expensive." I didn't understand what he meant. The trays came from the same kitchen, the food was the same for everyone, there was nothing to pay. But the next day, I started paying attention.
Men traded items from their trays without making a big deal out of it. Bread slid across tables, someone pushed over a dessert cup. Jokes were made. But the same men always seemed to receive more than they gave. The same men always seemed to be owed something later. Someone who took food today stood a little closer when a problem started the next day. Someone who accepted a drink showed up when someone else needed numbers. Nobody called it debt. Everyone remembered it. That was when it clicked. The man by the wall never accepted anything. He never offered anything. He ate what was on his tray and nothing else. No trades, no favors, no obligations. One afternoon, I ended up in line behind him. The guard handed him his tray. He nodded once and moved away without even looking at the food. He already knew what he was going to do with it. He walked to the wall and sat down in the same spot as always. I watched how the space around him stayed empty even when the room was crowded. People would rather stand than sit near him.
Not because they were afraid of him in the usual way, because sitting with him meant something they didn't want to choose. A few days later, I almost made the mistake of sitting near him. My legs were tired. The room was packed. The empty space beside him looked like relief. I took a step toward it without thinking. My cellmate grabbed my sleeve and shook his head slightly. "Don't," he said. "You don't want that question attached to you." "What question?" I whispered. "Why you chose him," he said. That sounded ridiculous at the time. I wasn't choosing anyone. I just wanted to sit. But prison turns small actions into messages, whether you mean them to be messages or not. Where you sit, who you eat with, who you accept things from. People read meaning into all of it. Over the next week, I started noticing something else. The man who ate alone wasn't targeted by anyone. No one tested him. No one tried to bully him. But no one defended him either. He existed outside the small alliances that formed around tables.
When jokes were shared, he wasn't included. He moved through the room like someone who had chosen to carry his own weight without leaning on anyone else's balance. One evening, a fight broke out over a tray. Someone accused another man of taking food that wasn't his. Voices rose, chairs scraped, guards rushed in. The fight ended as fast as it started. Everyone went back to eating, tense and quiet. The man by the wall didn't move. He kept eating like the noise wasn't happening. Later, when the room had settled, I noticed the men involved in the argument sitting closer together than before. The fight had tied them together in a way I didn't understand yet. Conflict builds bonds in prison just as much as favors do. The man by the wall didn't have those bonds. One night, when the block lights dimmed and conversations dropped into whispers, I asked my cellmate again about him. What happens if someone keeps eating alone like that? My cellmate didn't answer right away. Then he said, "It means you don't owe anyone, but it also means no one owes you."
"That sounds fair," I said. He let out a quiet laugh. "Fair doesn't protect you in here." A few days later, I saw what he meant. One of the men who usually ate at a crowded table got into trouble with someone from another unit. It wasn't loud, it wasn't dramatic, but the tension was there. When it came time for meals, the men he usually ate with shifted their bodies slightly, blocking space beside them. They made room for him without saying anything. They ate closer together. He wasn't alone. The message was clear to anyone watching. This problem belonged to all of them now. The man by the wall sat in his usual place, alone, unprotected by numbers, untied to anyone else's conflict. He didn't look scared. He didn't look brave. He looked prepared for whatever came with standing alone. That was when I started to understand the real reason people avoided eating with him. It wasn't because he was dangerous. It was because he had chosen a position that came with no safety net. Sitting with him meant choosing to be outside the small systems of protection that formed around shared food and shared favors.
Most people weren't ready to make that choice, even if they didn't like the systems they were part of. One afternoon, I finally spoke to him, not at the table, not in front of anyone. We crossed paths in the hallway when the noise was high enough that words disappeared into it. "Why do you always eat alone?" I asked quietly. He looked at me for a moment, like he was deciding whether the question was worth answering. Then he said, "Because every favor comes with a memory." "That doesn't answer the question," I said. "It does," he replied. "You just don't know how to hear it yet." Later that night, the words stayed with me. Every favor comes with a memory. In prison, memories are currency. People remember who fed them, who stood with them, who turned away when things went wrong. The man by the wall had chosen to keep his slate clean, even if it meant carrying the weight alone. Weeks passed. I stopped seeing his choice as strange and started seeing it as a strategy. Not a safe one, not an easy one,
But a deliberate one. He wasn't trying to be untouchable. He was trying to be unowned. In a place where so much of your life belongs to the system, choosing not to belong to anyone else is a kind of quiet resistance. I never sat next to him, I never shared food with him, but I watched him closely enough to understand what he was doing. He wasn't isolating himself because he hated people. He was isolating himself because he didn't want invisible strings attached to his survival. He accepted the risk that came with that choice. By the time I left that unit, the man by the wall was still there, eating alone, facing the wall, untouched by the small economies of favors that moved through the room. People still avoided his table, not because they were afraid of him, but because they weren't ready to live the way he did. In prison, even eating is a decision about who you belong to. He had decided to belong to no one, and that choice, in a place built on pressure and connection, was its own kind of danger.